Developers or crooks? The ultimate test of a moral society is the kind of world that it leaves to its children. Dietrich Bonhoeffer. (2000) When we got back to Roatan, I jumped right back into work with my newborn strapped to my hip. I didn't change my routine much. I just had my little sidekick with me everywhere I went. We hired extra help to manage the hotel and help me take care of Olivier, and I continued to go diving with my students. Like many working moms, I often felt torn between my duties at work and being there for my son. The island was getting busier with the tourists returning after Hurricane Mitch. This meant there were more tasks for me to handle. Alongside managing the website, bookings, guest arrivals, and activities, I also had to oversee the staff and maintenance of the houses. It was a lot of work, but I kept going, driven by a strong sense of commitment to both my family and my job. As the island's popularity surged, foreign investors began pouring in. Roatan's untouched beauty, much like any hidden gem, attracted adventurous tourists and developers with questionable motives. The locals often shared tales of crooks and pirates who once took refuge on the island. The old stories seemed to spring to life as more unsavory characters set their sights on our expanding expat community. One such character, Jack Edmund, with a particularly sketchy past, found refuge on the island after being kicked out of Belize in the mid-90s. Described as part Canadian, part American from the West Coast, Edmunds was a man in his late 40s who purchased real estate all over the island. He developed properties that would alter the landscape of West Bay and Roatan forever. Edmund arrived with his crew on the vacant property next door to us, armed with machetes and other tools to cut down trees. The sound of trees falling woke me up in the early hours of the morning, and I jumped out of bed to try to stop them from cutting the trees so close to my heart. I crossed over the property line in my pajamas in a state of disbelief. "What are you doing?" I shouted, my voice breaking, but they ignored me. Their indifference stung. The steady thud of their machetes continued, each strike cutting deeper into my soul. The metallic clang filled the air, mixed with the creak of bending branches and the snap of splitting wood. "Who said you could cut all these trees?" I inquired in a firm voice, but they didn't even bother to look up. Their actions spoke volumes of disregard. The scent of freshly cut wood hung heavy in the air, mixing with the aroma of upturned soil. Disturbed by the sight of machetes hacking away at the land right beside my home, and driven by a sense of responsibility, a fight ignited within me. It wasn't just the loss of trees that upset me, but their indifference toward the environment and the future consequences of their actions. Armed with an idealism that I could make a difference and a profound sense of urgency to protect the environment, I decided to embark on a mission to the municipal office in Coxon Hole. I wasted no time when I got back to our room. I got ready and started the 40-minute walk down the beach to catch the taxi to Coxon Hole. At the municipal office, nothing was computerized and everything was written on forms and filed in metal cabinets. A woman took down the details of my complaint and said they would investigate. "Is that it? Is that all you're going to do?" I asked her incredulously, feeling desperation creep in. It felt like a punch to the gut to receive such a casual response to something that stirred so deep a concern within me. "Yes, ma'am, that is all we can do for now, but don't worry, we will look into this," she replied calmly, her words falling flat against the backdrop of my swirling emotions. A sense of helplessness gnawed at me, a bitter taste lingering on my tongue as I struggled to accept the inadequacy of her response. It was perplexing how the locals could be so indifferent to the destruction of their land by foreign investors. Sensing my annoyance, the woman attempted to offer a more constructive solution. She suggested that I reach out to Irma Brady, an environmental activist who founded the Bay Islands Conservation Association in 1990. Not knowing what else to do, I jumped into a taxi and headed to the Sandy Bay area where she lived. Irma was well known on the island, and the taxi driver knew where to drop me off. I walked down the dirt path toward the beach until I found Irma's house. Irma lived with her husband, an American who had come to Honduras to join the Peace Corps in the 70s, fell in love with Irma, and never left. They lived in a simple wooden house with a sign that said Bay Islands Conservation Association, BICA, in brackets. I walked down a few stairs toward her office underneath her front deck. Opening the screen door, I knocked lightly and peeked inside. She peered at me over her reading glasses while leaning over piles of paper on her desk. She welcomed me with her thick Creole accent originating from the neighboring island of Utila. "Come in now, take a seat, and tell me what you're looking for." Irma was a strong advocate for the preservation of the Bay Islands ecosystem. She told me that the permits had been given to Jack Edmund by the Environmental Agency in Tegucigalpa, the capital city on the mainland. "They aren't even islanders," I cried out. Irma spoke without the same emotion as I did. "That's right. They may never have set foot on Roatan." The mainlanders, lured by promises of paradise, were unwittingly the instruments of environmental destruction. It felt like a betrayal of trust, the exploitation of the land for the sake of profit. With Irma's unwavering guidance, I was able to navigate legal avenues, rally community support, and bring attention to the environmental violations happening next door. But despite Irma's persistence, our efforts could only stall, not halt, the inevitable destruction of that piece of paradise next door to us. With each passing day, more workers were brought in, and they continued to ravage the land, as a sense of despair settled over me. The once thriving landscape was systematically dismantled before my eyes. The relentless buzz of bulldozers and ceaseless churn of cement trucks became the soundtrack of my existence, a constant reminder of the irreversible damage unfolding next door. The arrival of the cement truck at 6 a.m. punctuated the stillness of the morning and became a dreaded ritual that cast a shadow over each day. For 2 long years, the truck loomed outside my bedroom window, and with each pour of concrete, another piece of biodiversity and tropical allure was obliterated. I felt powerless, like a lone voice crying out in the wilderness, belittled and ignored. The loss of the natural beauty that once surrounded us weighed heavily on my heart, leaving me with a deep sense of grief for what had been lost and what could never be regained. In the midst of overwhelming hopelessness, I found relief through coping mechanisms. Each morning, at the first sound of the cement truck, I smoked marijuana from a large bamboo bong to keep myself from lashing out at someone. I walked around feeling like I was holding a live grenade, ready to explode at any moment and take down anyone near me. When they started to cut the trees closest to our property, I called Andrew, the island reporter who had founded the English magazine The Voice. I pleaded with him frantically to come and witness my act of protest. "I'm finishing the final edition of the magazine for this month. Can you take pictures and send them to me?" he replied nonchalantly. Andrew's response only heightened my sense of isolation, his dismissive words cutting through me like a blade. Realizing he wouldn't stand by my side left me feeling abandoned and exposed. Without Andrew's support, the thought of tying myself to a tree, surrounded by men armed with machetes, filled me with fear, and I worried for my safety, which chipped away at the edges of my resolve. In the end, I was forced to abandon the idea, which was a bitter reminder of the uphill battle I faced alone. Through all my complaints to the municipality and all our joint efforts with the Bay Islands Conservation Association, I was able to save just one almond tree on the property line that lay outside their construction plan. It dropped its seed on our property, and my only compensation was to watch that baby almond tree grow up on my side of the fence. Was this tree and the baby tree worth all my anguish? I questioned myself. The lush tropical trees had been replaced by rows of air-conditioned condos and a swimming pool in the middle. Where towering greenery once stood, concrete walkways were now bordered by small ornamental plants. Along the beach, where the locals once relaxed under the coconut trees and enjoyed carefree days by the shore, a drink bar and rows of lounge chairs had taken their place. Private guards patrolled the area, enforcing rules that barred the locals from the simple pleasure of resting in the shade of the trees during their visit to the beach. I began to discover that there's a gray matter that lives between all clear lines of rules and regulations, especially in these kinds of places. But don't be fooled into thinking it is any less corrupt anywhere else. This gray zone enabled individuals with the means to clear-cut forests and change residential zoning laws simply by offering additional funds. I decided that I wanted to fight them all, but the first fight was with Pierre, who was very angry with me for denouncing such an influential figure on the island. Merde, they could plant cocaine around the house, leak it to the police, and will go to jail for your complaint to the municipality, he hollered. I'm willing to take the risk, I said willfully. I'm not going to sit around and do nothing while he rapes the land. I initiated the West Bay Association in the hope of uniting our neighbors to take a stand against the unlawful construction that was wreaking havoc on West Bay's fragile ecosystem. Driven by idealism and a desire to preserve the natural beauty of our surroundings, I found myself increasingly disgruntled by the environmental injustices that were unfolding in our community. My passion became palpable to the extent that people would intentionally avoid me in the supermarket, aware of my inclination to passionately discuss these environmental issues until their ears bled. I was surrounded by people who came to reside in a breathtaking tropical haven, yet their lack of concern for the land and detachment from the environment were in stark contradiction. I passionately led weekly meetings for the association. A key local figure who had previously served as the mayor of Roatan initially rallied behind our cause. He was a significant landowner in West Bay, but it wasn't long before he sold a substantial beachfront property to foreign investors for a condo project. If a wealthy local who didn't need the money could sell off the land for environmental rape, the whole cause was lost. This broke my resolve and my naive belief that I could do anything to protect the fragile ecosystem of the beach I called home.